Hey, welcome to Storytime with me. I'm going to confess straight away that I totally just did a cheat. I used to record these and then upload them, and what would happen is there'd be all these difficult sentences and just bits of me reading it, going like, "What the fuck did I just read?" and rereading it, and I was like, "Yeah, this is taking too long. I was getting too perfectionist on it," and I was like, "Haha! If we go live, we can dodge all this extra effort and actually just fucking get this shit done." And then yeah, no, I got like fucking halfway through the first page just there and was like, no, no, this is just not good enough. This is no, 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 no. So I've hopefully deleted that and we're starting again now. Not a cheat at all. Okay, so yeah, welcome back. Yeah, I think I said it before, but I'll say it again. I am quite proud. Like it's another Sunday, it's another week, and I'm fucking doing the thing. Here we are. So we're up to chapter 15. Yeah, where did we end? Oh yeah, Borja, the little village that they went to find that had been decimated by natives 30 odd years ago and was just overgrown. So they'd just gotten there, and I think the last line was, "And so we stood and surveyed the scene, the first white men, as far as I know, to penetrate to the site of that dismal page of Peruvian history, since the disconsolate skipper of the steamboat which was to bring back the news to Iquitos turned the nose of his command downstream." Whoa. I'm not feeling like my voice is really with it today. Projection's wrong. Could be like new flatmate just moved in, so I'm like real conscious. Like this one, I know Sam can hear me. Hi Sam. But Aaron's new. Um, maybe feeling a little bit self-conscious. Not sure. Anyway. No, there was nothing there to clear. Yeah, very awkward. Yeah, chapter 15. The Pongo De Manseriche. Again, pronunciations. Sorry, and thanks for putting up with me and any help you can provide. In accordance with our plans, we turned back that same evening, July 19th, 1899, and headed for Mataya Isla, leaving all the stores which we had taken up with us, cached in our new base on the right bank just opposite Borja. The latter, by the way, is marked on most maps to this day, plain proof of the mystery which surrounds the whole region, and of the little that is known of the details of this, the greatest unexplored tract on the face of the earth. An hour and a half of steady pulling with the current took us over the whole distance which we had toiled to cover for 3 long days. We realized more vividly than ever how great had been the obstacles in the way of our progress. A bright moon showed us the way, what with the relief of going with the stream after struggling against it, the delicious coolness of the night air, and the satisfaction of having had a glimpse of the Pongo. We were glad to be alive. Night travelling in canoes with a strong current to keep your pace at about 10 knots is no sinecure. I speak of narrow rivers, of course. The Marañon, on this stretch, which we were now covering, has an average breadth of some 300 yards, a mass of live, boiling water swirling round rocks scattered at random, tearing angrily at the fallen trees, among them some of the giants of the forest which had been caught in the uneven surface of its bed in our headlong scurry to the sea, bounding along with a roar and a hiss like an express locomotive. There would be stretches of smooth water at times, with just a steady rush of the river to break the silence, that low whispering which always rises from moving water. As for the pace, that can always be ascertained more or less accurately by using the bottom of the canoe as a sounding board. When the current is swift, the constant rolling of the stones along the bed of the river is transmitted to the canoe by the medium of the water so plainly that their movement is conveyed to one pressing his ear against the bottom as clearly as if it were taking place close at hand in the open air. The heavier the stones which are being moved, the swifter the current. Behind this noise, as it were, forming a background to the irregular bumping of the rocks, is the ceaseless erosion of the sand as it scours the ever-shifting bed of the river. Where the river is deeper, more sluggish, and free from rocks, Nothing but the steady hissing of the sand can be distinguished. Night canoeing is a dangerous game by reason of the snags among which the craft must be steered, and which rear themselves to a height of 8 and 10 feet, rising and falling with rocking motion as the current whips them. The eddies and currents, which set in all directions, make the craft move with more leeway than headway as often as not, with the result that a snag, which appeared to be at a safe distance on one side or the other of one's course, suddenly looms up straight ahead and threatens instant disaster. It should be realized that many of the snags are not merely odd branches, but trunks of 100-foot trees, whose roots are caught and held in the boulders. A blow from one of these suffices to break a canoe in half or lift it bodily into the air. And so, much vigilance and care is required, for the cargo is irreplaceable and therefore invaluable. As we slid along in the moonlight, keeping to the swiftest channels, as often as not we were within earshot of the bank. Gliding along on the lookout for fallen trees, we heard the call of the tuta cuchillo, a single round soft note, repeated once as it skims through the upper branches in search of wild fruits. This monkey follows the habits of the owl, in that it is a night animal and abhors the sunshine. Yeah. I can relate. And then the plaintive call of a bird, a call peculiar to this country and distinct from that of any bird I know of which inhabits civilized lands. It consists of 5 notes, uttered in as many seconds, a descending scale of neither tones nor half-tones, nor indeed any other recognized musical intervals. The whole effect is weird to a degree, and only makes more lonely the lonely night watches. I have heard the call from one end of the Amazon country to the other, but have never been able to discover from what particular species it comes. Perhaps it is an owl, but these birds are so elusive that I never saw but one during all my 6 years in the woods. He was almost white and only stood 6 inches high. The English naturalist Bates thought it was the call of some kind of warbler. Waterton evidently heard it too, for he speaks of the tolling of the bellbird. I have to sort of interject here because I'm actually genuinely curious what this bird is. I remember reading, I hadn't realised we got this far. I remember reading this with Bert back before I moved back to Ireland, back before I moved back to New Zealand. And he was like, yeah, I remember that from when I was in Peru. It goes like, ooh, 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 or like something to that effect. And yeah, just from that written description, he totally recognized the bird and was able to sort of replicate the call. This would have been about a year ago we had this chat, so I might be a bit off on my recollection of how it sounded. But on the off chance anyone is watching this that could actually tell us what that bird is called, yeah, that would be cool to know. Sure. Then comes the answering call of the pochil, the Quechua name for any kind of large black turkey. I think this must be the strangest cry that ever came from the throat of a bird. Indeed, one unaccustomed to the noises of the forest would take it for the distant lowing of a cow, or even the bellowing of a bull buffalo. From a distance of several miles on a still night, it floats from bank to bank, a low, booming note, followed by a sharp grunt. Always, during the brief twilight between sundown and darkness, a short half-hour in these parts, does this bird break the silence. In strange contrast comes a tremulous whistle of the yangaruru, a magnificent pheasant-like bird in Quechua, long drawn out and plaintive, repeated twice and falling away half a tone the last time. From time to time, a tapir, sportively inclined, or perhaps chased by a jaguar, comes crashing through the undergrowth and dives into the water in a blind rush which heeds no obstacle, be it man or canoe. By some strange freak of nature, these huge, ungainly, 600-pound beasts are endowed with the power to make but one noise, which might be the chirp of a wren. And so, moving downriver stealthily to the accompaniment of the forest voices, we turned a bend, to find ourselves facing a campfire only 1 hour and a half, as my journal records, after pushing off. The sight almost pulled us up short, so unexpected was it, and so incredulous were we of the distance we had covered. We found all well on Mataya Isla. The 3 inhabitants had benefited by their rest, so we settled down to the business of transporting the remainder of our kit to the mouth of the Pongo, obviously the first thing which called for our attention. It will be remembered that we had left a certain amount of baggage further downstream still. The trio which had rested during our first trip up to the Pongo went off with their light canoe to fetch it up, leaving us to a few days hunting on the island. I remember those few days chiefly by having lost my pants. I ran up against a jaguar, armed only with an escopeta of the common trade variety, a shotgun which had once had 2 barrels. It then had half a barrel. The other 1.5 had been blown off long ago. The half went on one memorable evening when I stalked a duck for dinner. I shot the duck, not only with the charge, but also 12 inches of barrel. I believe that in the days of the Napoleonic Wars, this would have been known as a bar shot. The whole barrel had been missing ever since the man who sold me the gun, Dr. Jones of Iquitos, tried to demonstrate the efficacy of smokeless powder shortly after taking my money. He had a narrow escape, and I'm sorry. After watching half the gun fly over his left shoulder, he handed me back what was left with the assurance that it was still a killing weapon. I thanked him and told him I fully realized that it was sure to kill something. Well, our circumstances were tragic. I was swimming the river with that same unique weapon, endeavoring to keep it, as well as my pants, from getting wet. I should have done far better to concentrate my attention on the latter, which were really the more valuable of the 2. After landing, still grasping the wretched gun, Jack was with me at the time, were roaming around the woods, looking for what had really been the object of the expedition, some turkeys which had settled in the trees thereabouts. We were brought down to earth by the roar of a jaguar, quite as impressive a noise as any lion can produce, not more than 15 yards away. After mature reflection, I have come to the conclusion that the animal's sense of delicacy was affected by my unseemly appearance, for no sooner had we taken a pace toward him than he slunk off. I find in my journal a note by Morse, the last word of that stirring episode. I found your damned old pants stuck in the mud. I filled them with turtle eggs, the best thing they ever held. During the succeeding month of August, several trips were made by the 2 parties into which we were now divided without accident. Morse and his companions were caught below Mataya Isla by high water. The rising and falling of the rivers succeed each other with startling rapidity, owing to the heavy showers and the sodden state of the ground. I have known the Upper Yasuni to multiply itself by 25 in an hour. They lived for 8 days on nothing but turtles' eggs. Speaking of provisions, by the way, it was during this period that we saw the bottom of the hardtack barrel. The last few biscuits had whiskers on them 2 inches in length. Finally, we all arrived with the last of the stores at Borja on September 4th, a great day, for we were ready at last to attack the Pongo De Manseriche. On the site of Borja, we erected a permanent camp, clearing about an acre of land and leaving only the fruit trees standing. Uncertain as to whether we should ever return that way at all, we did not leave much behind us. However, we planted Indian corn and yucca, the corn to be ready in 3 months' time, the yucca in 6. We had seen no signs of the savages as yet. There had, as a matter of fact, been no record of their having been below the Pongo since the last raid of Branca, about a year previous to that date, while for a number of years before that they had not been seen at all. Before we had been there 12 hours, 3 of us made the first reconnaissance of the canyon. I will refer to my notes for the impression that it made on us. Ed, Game, and I explored the Pongo in a small canoe. Hold on. Yep.
Hello. See, I didn't know if I should surprise you, but I think that was definitely the way to go. Yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen you in so long.
How are you doing?
Oh, I was in the middle of recording a story Just